Hello and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics podcast. I'm your host, Alex Sofronas, and today we're on with Kyle Scott. Kyle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here. It's a beautiful day. I'm here in New York City. I'm Kyle Scott. I am General Manager of High Growth Creators at Thinkific. It's a platform in the creator economy. We help experts monetize their expertise. So I'm responsible for our top customers. Typically, they're making six figures or above on the platform, selling courses, membership programs, coaching, consulting, anything where someone is monetizing a special talent that they have through the internet. And it has been absolutely fantastic, this journey with Thinkific so far. Prior to this, I actually built a business on Thinkific with celebrity real estate agent Ryan Serhant. I pitched him on this idea of taking his best-selling book and turning it into a course. Did that as a side project while I was still at NBC News as a producer. It did $500,000 in 2 weeks. And then we're like, okay, I think we're onto something. And then ended up partnering with Ryan and growing that business to nearly $10 million a year in revenue. And it has been such a wild ride. So that is who I am. I help experts monetize their expertise.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, how have you seen the creator economy change over the last several years?
Look, I think it's really important to make this distinction between the creator economy and a subset of it that is emerging today called the expert economy. If you go back to, let's call it the late 2010s, right before the pandemic, there was a word that we used called influencer. And that word has since come out of vogue. But really, what it meant is using social media to influence buying behavior. That is where the term came from. And it has since morphed into what we now call the creator economy. But fundamentally, when we say creator economy, we're really talking about online creators who are monetizing an audience through social media. So that's through brand deals or through something like AdSense revenue, or they're getting paid by TikTok, whatever it might be. Now, the difference between the creator economy and the expert economy is if your business is social media, you're in the creator economy. If your business just uses social media to generate leads and create distribution, you're in the expert economy. So something that I've seen, especially over these past couple of years, and I've written about this in a LinkedIn article. If you go to my LinkedIn, Kyle Scott, you can find the writing about this. The Google Trends publishes their search data. Creator economy searches has been going down in the past 2 years, while expert economy has been going up. And the reason for that is that more and more individuals are realizing that they have a special skill that they can build their own business around, and that social media is not a long-term business strategy in and of itself. Social media creators have a shelf life if you are building a business purely on social. And it's a great business, but you have to recognize that it is not clear that is going to be a sustainable business. What you should be doing is using social to build a following, and yes, monetize it as much as you can, but then take that audience and own that audience. Own your audience, own your income. So take the social media followers, get their email addresses, bring them further into the funnel with you through newsletters, and then sell them on your expertise, whether that's courses, coaching, consulting, SaaS products, whatever it might be.
So when you're advising somebody who might not be a creator or an expert yet, but they want to take a part in this new economy that's emerging, where do you recommend they start to figure out what they want to focus on?
There's a classic diagram, and I didn't make this up, but there is a classic diagram when talking about your skill set and what you should be doing largely with your life. As at the intersection of what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and where you can make money. So think of it as a three-way Venn diagram. In the middle is where you should be thinking about focusing your time and your energy and your resources. So what I always recommend is make a list of the things. I would start with the things that you're passionate about, then make the list of the things that you're good at. May not be both. You may love acting, but be terrible at acting. It's totally fine. And then the final one is look at that list and see what you can actually make money doing. And I just want to be clear that making money is in the eye of the beholder. So it's not saying, what can you make $1 million a year doing? What can you make six figures? It's what can you likely do that makes a level of income that you're looking for, because not everyone, and the internet gets this wrong sometimes, not everyone needs to make high six figures. Not everyone needs to be flying in a private jet. It's about the lifestyle that you want to live, and ultimately finding that intersection between the lifestyle you want to live, what you can be paid at, what you're excited about, what you're passionate about, and what you're good at. That is where I would start.
And what would be the skill of somebody that would succeed in the content space? Is it extroversion? Is it just maybe, what is it?
No, it's not extroversion. Anyone can learn this, right? And I'll use me as an example. I went to Cornell for undergrad. I was an applied economics and management major with a concentration in accounting and finance with a minor in law and society. Has absolutely nothing to do with creator economy, has nothing to do with the news. Remember, I was a news producer for 10 years at NBC News, is where I started my career. Anyone can learn this. The skill set is a communication skill set, but being a good communicator has nothing to do with being an introvert, being an extrovert, being an ambivert. Most of us are ambiverts. But you can be a great communicator if you are an introvert, and you could be a terrible communicator if you are an extrovert, i.e. if you are so loud and gregarious that you talk over everybody and you're just like boisterous and pay attention to me. That does not make you a good communicator, just FYI. I would say it's communication skill set, but really you're a good communicator when you're passionate about what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about. So again, it goes back to that Venn diagram, what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and then the money, the income, the sustainability comes from there.
That's really insightful. Let's say somebody is creating, what are the platforms? Should they just go on all of the platforms? Does it depend on where the audience is? How do you pick where to be present?
Yeah, so once you know what you're building, where your intersection is between passion, what you're good at, and what you can make money doing, the next question is, what is the transformation that you want to see for an audience? So with that thing that you're good at, you're passionate about, and you can make money doing, who's the audience? Who can benefit from your unique skill? First, you start there of who's the audience. Then you go to what is the transformation that you're providing for this audience? I see a lot of people in the expert economy make the mistake that they think that they're selling information. They think that they're selling a library, or they are a library. No one needs a library. No one needs information. What people need is the results of that information. So I'll use the example of a fitness instructor, right? Nobody needs fitness. What they need is, I want to live longer. I want to be healthier. I want my appearance to be a certain way. I'm getting elderly and I don't want to break my bones, so I need to stay fit. There's so many reasons. No one needs fitness. No one needs a fitness trainer. What they need is body transformation for some other reason. So you really have to think about, as you're entering into this area, what is the transformation that you want to deliver for your audience? And the way to figure that out, there's an easy formula for this. It's called a transformation statement. It's I help, insert audience here, do what? What is the thing that you're helping them do? So they can, what is the outcome that they want? Because why does that matter? So I'll give you an example. Let's use the example of what I did with Ryan. So we helped, and remember, Ryan is a real estate salesperson. He's an expert at real estate, sales specifically. So what we did is we help real estate agents sell more. Why do they need to sell more? So they can earn more money. Great. Why do they need to earn more money? So that way they can live a life of unlimited potential in which they've left nothing on the table. So we went from the actual practical, what are we doing? We're learning to sell, to what's the outcome of selling? Money. But again, no one needs money. What people need is an income to survive. They need ego. They need status, right? That is what they need. No one needs money. It doesn't do anything for you. So what did we do? We provided them with a vehicle so that they can live up to their full potential. Whenever you're trying to figure this out, you first have to figure out the transformation. And then to finally answer your question, you only get to pick the platform once you know who you're serving, because the answer to what platform to use is 100% dependent on where your audience is hanging out. And I'll give you another example. I was at an event last night for Adweek, which is a big advertising magazine media company. I met someone there who used to be a journalist for The Information. He had a column advice type column analysis for The Information, which is a niche publication. It's competing with Wall Street Journal. And he just moved to Substack, and he was like, Kyle, I'm not finding new audience on Substack. Where should I go? Should I be on YouTube? Should I be on Instagram? And I said, how much does your subscription cost? $500 a year. And I said, okay, what are you doing? You're providing insight and analysis, like deep data-backed insight and analysis about the AI industry. Okay, great. Your audience is probably not on Instagram. Your audience is maybe on LinkedIn, but as we talked about it further, he's really looking for like hedge fund managers, like VCs, like really successful people who are interested in a deep dive to pay $500 a year for his information. So that lends itself to private networking clubs and networking groups, etc. So if I told him just generically go on Instagram and promote your wares, he would not be finding the people who he needs to find to buy his $500 a year information product. So it's 100% dependent on your audience where you need to go and show up to be able to advertise your message and ultimately sell your product. Reality is, to answer that, you have to unpack it a couple of steps before, because I see too many times people will get so caught up in the platform without actually realizing who they want to serve and why they want to serve them.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're really thinking from a perspective, who wants to consume the product that I'm ultimately selling?
I have this theory that I'll start with this, which is you've probably heard the philosophical argument thought. You've probably heard the philosophical thought experiment before, which is if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Here's how it relates to business. You could have the best product in the world, but if no one knows about it, it does not matter. Doesn't matter. You could have invented the cure for cancer. Congratulations. How are people finding out about it so that you can go cure their cancer? So for me, it starts with a marketing question, which is how can we raise awareness of the solution that we have? And an argument that I would make here is if you're just starting out, you don't know yet that you have what they call product market fit, which is really a fancy way of saying, does your solution, does your product solve a problem for a real person? So what you want to do is generate demand for an embarrassing V1, an embarrassing first version, before you even pour all this money into making the best product in the world. Because you want to get signals that it works. And once you start to get signals of people who really have this problem, they're willing to take and invest in and use a half-baked version of it because it's better than the alternative, which is nothing. You can then use them to get real user feedback to improve the product. But you don't get the right to do that if you don't first create demand. You don't first find the people with your problem that you're trying to solve. So I see every single business first and foremost as a marketing problem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love the idea of getting that embarrassing V1 out and just assessing demand. Are people interested in it?
Does this solve a real problem? That's what it always comes down to, is what is the problem that we're solving?
So what kind of content do you build if you're an expert? Is it content around the building process for whatever product you want to launch? Is it around an industry that you're an expert in? Is it conversations with other people in the industry, or is it whatever interests you?
It's going to depend upon the problem that you're looking to solve. It always goes back to that, and it goes back to your audience. Now, generally, and speaking in very high level terms, the content, if you're producing what we would call top of funnel, right? If you're producing high level awareness content on social saying, hey, look at me, I'm here. You want to raise awareness of yourself and your brand. Simply break down your content calendar, your posting strategy into 3 buckets. Your professional, your personal, and something fun /hobby/thought leadership. And the reason for that is that people engage with real people. No one wants to follow a robotic brand. No one wants to follow a boring person who only speaks about work. So you should be breaking down your content into saying, here's what I'm building, here's what I'm doing, life of an entrepreneur, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A little bit about personal, which is, hey, I'm going to the gym. I'm going to brunch. Here's my girlfriend, here's my boyfriend, whatever it might be. Here's my kids. and then a little bit of like thought leadership-y, funny, something, whatever this thing is that you have outside. And that's going to depend on your brand. So some people will go like down the fashion route. Some people will go down a more like lifestyle route and be like, I do windsurfing. Look at me doing windsurfing. Has absolutely nothing to do with their personal life or their professional life, but it's interesting. Some people have watch collections. Whatever will make you a little bit more interesting outside of your day job and your kids or your romantic relationships, whatever it might be.
So we're talking about owning the product you're selling, but what about creators that are selling products for businesses? So I'm curious, let's say for a business, how important is it to be hiring creators or expert? What was the term? Expert?
People in the expert economy. Experts. It's just experts.
Oh, just experts. Yeah.
Experts. You're asking, the question that you're asking is how important is content creation to B2B marketing? If we wanted to really abstract it, right? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I would say it's fundamental. People buy from people. That's where the industry, that's where the economy is going. Now, in the 1980s, the 1990s, and there's all this like consolidation and conglomerates. There were big corporate brands. GE, you bought from GE, General Electric, right? If you actually look at some of the research now, trust in big brands is at an all-time low. And that does include the media. That does include the NBCs of the world and the ABCs and the CBSs of the world. Trust in large entities, large conglomerates, large faceless brands is at an all-time low. What do we end up doing? Thanks to social media, we end up following people that we trust. So if you're operating a business and you're selling to other businesses, what you're really doing is you are people, founders, salespeople, marketers, selling to people at companies with problems. Meaning, yes, you're selling your solution. Let's say you sell, I don't know, what's an example you want to use? You sell, maybe let's say you sell accounting software. Look, let's go as non-exciting as it can get. You sell QuickBooks to your small businesses, or you're selling SAP. Let's make it even more boring. You're selling SAP enterprise planning software. The person who's buying this is the CFO, the chief information officer, the chief technology officer. It's a person that has goals and bonuses and stock options, whatever it might be, tied to the company's ability to perform. And they need SAP to better perform, to increase that executive's incentives, their reputation. Look how good of an executive I am. I saved the company money, I grew revenue, whatever it is. Their financial incentives, I had my bonus targets, the company's stock grew, and their human incentives, right? As a leader in a company who's making a purchasing decision of SAP, you're also responsible for your team. You're responsible for your team's happiness. You're responsible for your team's financial success. They have a job because you're helping shepherd the company and making sure that you make smart decisions for the financial security of that company. And they also have careers that they want to grow. They want to be part of a big SAP implementation because that's great experience for their career. So you're selling to someone who has the same human desires and ambitions as someone who is a consumer. B2B marketing is exactly the same. So what do you have to do? You have to deploy consumer strategies. Meaning, as a business, you should be doing two things. Number one, your employees should be the face of the business. Your employees should be the face of the business. I have seen too many times legacy companies will be afraid of their employees creating a personal brand for themselves. That is 100% a mistake because people buy from people. People want to work at companies where people work, right? They don't work at a faceless company. They want to work for a manager. They want to work for a leader. So your employees need to be out in front, helping build the employer brand. The second part is 100% you should be partnering with influencers in the field. So let's go back to the SAP example. While I am not familiar with SAP influencers, I am certain that they exist. And the reason why I am certain that they exist is because if you watch golf, so this weekend when we're recording this is the Masters. I'm not sure if it's still true, but it was certainly true 5 years ago. SAP would sponsor some of the golfers and you'd see on their shirt SAP, and 100% you would see SAP commercials on the Masters. Why? Because there's a stereotype that business people watch golf. I don't know why that stereotype exists. It exists. So yes, SAP is using the golf influencer to sell SAP. Who is the LinkedIn influencer? If you're SAP, who is the LinkedIn influencer who's really influential in the enterprise software implementation space? That person exists. Person exists. And you should be partnering with that person. Yes, maybe it's a brand deal, maybe it's content swap, maybe there's something there, but 100% as a business, you should be putting that person who's influential in the space forward as a representative of your brand.
Yeah. And let's look at the analytics side now. So are you giving that influencer, let's say if it's for an online deal, would you give them a UTM link that allows their traffic to be measured by your business?
Oh, for sure. There's so many different ways to do it, and it depends upon the way that you're running the campaign, right? If it's a direct conversion campaign, yes, you could do UTM. You could also use a coupon code, right? You've probably listened to podcasts, or podcast hosts will say, use the coupon code podcast for 10% off on Shopify or whatever it might be. So you can use coupon codes that are exchanged, but yes, you should be measuring where that either the traffic is coming from, where the purchases are coming from, right? What's the actual purchase behavior by using coupons or some other tracking. You create a unique sales page or a unique checkout page, right? Go to examplecompany.com/podcast host's name for checkout. That's an option. You can also measure impressions, right? If you're working with a good example, going back to our SAP example that we just discussed, when SAP sponsors a advertisement for the masters, they put in an actual commercial, they're measuring impressions. They can't necessarily measure buying behavior of someone who saw the SAP commercial and then called up 1-800-SAP to say, hi, I need software implementation. I don't think anyone does that, but they can measure impressions. So depending on the objective of your campaign, if it's brand awareness impressions, or if it's actually driving sales, you should have a measurement attached to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you think about impressions, are you correlating that to down funnel stages that a prospect can be in? How do you look at impressions and extract a value from that?
It's this classic problem. It's an attribution problem, and it's really hard to do. I don't know if anyone has solved that, 100% solved top of funnel attribution. There's a famous quote from a marketer, John Wanamaker, I believe was his name. I can Google it. You know what I'm going to say?
Yeah.
I see you shaking your head. Yeah. I can tell you that 50% of my marketing is working. I just don't know what 50% is. Now, if you're running a direct conversion campaign, i.e. buy now, use the coupon, yeah, that is trackable. UTM codes, that's clicks, that's use of a coupon code. But if you're doing pure brand marketing, meaning top of funnel, it is hard to measure. You can have a leading indicator such as you could absolutely have impressions. You could do a download of a lead magnet, sign up to get our perspective, our white paper on enterprise software implementation. A little hard. Like, it depends on the objectives of your campaign. But to a certain degree, when you're doing pure brand marketing, you're going to have faith that it's working. And you can measure that by impressions. And over the long run, of course, you could say that we had a lift, right? We have more press mentions now. We have more people tagging us on social media. And yes, that should, as long as those people or those press mentions are for your ICP, there's a little bit of faith that you're going to have that's going to convert down funnel. Because there is no way to get direct attribution to an SAP ad aired during the Masters.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think about strategy of going all in with one influencer versus hiring several influencers? How do you decide the quantity of influencers to use?
You should always diversify. And the quantity of influencers will always depend upon your goal. So when you're setting a marketing goal, you're not setting a goal of how many influencers do I need. You're setting a sales goal, right? I need to drive this many sales, this much revenue. Okay. Based on our conversion funnel typically, and let's say you have an e-commerce product, or this also works for phone sales too, but you could measure your funnel and you could say, okay, if we get 100 visitors to our site, 10% of them will click on the sales page, 3% of them will click on the checkout page, and 1% will convert. Okay, great. What are the levers that we have to pull? We can have better conversion between steps, meaning our landing page copy can be better to get people down to the checkout page. Okay, our checkout page, our follow-up, our abandoned cart campaigns, those can be better. Or what else can we do? We can also go all the way to the top, keep those the same, obviously work on them, but if you keep them the same and then just increase top of funnel traffic, as long as it's your ICP that's coming in, you're also going to spit out more money because you have a larger top of funnel. So you then ask, okay, if I want to increase my traffic, if I want to double my traffic, how much am I willing to pay to double my traffic? That comes down to LTV to CAC, right? You can actually just run the math and say, if I double my traffic, I'm going to get this much more in sales. I'm willing to spend this much more in advertising. Okay, now I have a target budget. Now, which are the influencers? That is one lever that I have to pull to increase my traffic. If you think there's one really good influencer who's going to accomplish that goal, great, use one influencer. Risky, because there's no 100% guarantee. But if you are 100, like I'm sure this is going to work, that's where experience, a little bit of experience and the influencer's sort of credibility and prior case studies comes in. Sure. Better strategy is to invest in a few influencers, maybe smaller ones, but you're going to have a better likelihood because you're not putting all your dollars in one basket. You're still assuming that you have a certain traffic increase. It's just from more sources rather than one source. So you'd always back into that question of how many influencers, like you asked it, from what are my goals? And the goals should tie back to revenue that I want to generate.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you like validate that what an influencer is telling you is accurate in terms of traffic and exposure and audience?
Great question. Hopefully the people that you're working with are ethical. Usually they'll have a pitch deck, right? That will say, here's what it is. You could also ask, like in the case studies, right? The influencer has case studies, 100% ask for references. Say, hey, can I talk to the marketing department at that other company that you worked for? I'd like to know what it's like working with you. Ask for the references. That's probably even better than them just sending you a screenshot of their analytics. Like you want to know, yes, the analytics are fine, but at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with the analytics. It has to do with the results. So you ask that company, the reference company, what were the results? Regardless of what they promised, what were the results? And then you could really get a sense of, is this person real? Are they good to work with? And remember, there's risk in any campaign. When I was at NBC, I remember we had to make some make goods. We didn't get the impressions that we promised advertisers. We had to do make goods, meaning run more ads. So it happens sometimes, and an ethical influencer, creator, if you want to use that word, who wants to do business multiple times will consider the long-term relationship and might consider a make good if they don't deliver on the results that they're expecting.
I like that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, this is really interesting. How do you see the future of expert creators or influencers in becoming more crowded? How do you see this playing out into the future?
Yeah, so there's a great statistic by Goldman Sachs, and I'm going to pull it up quickly because I haven't actually, surprisingly, I used to cite this one all the time. I haven't cited it in a while, but let me just pull it up for you to cite it for you. The creator economy by 2027, this is according to Goldman Sachs research, the creator economy could approach $500 billion by 2027. So it is growing. And the majority of that comes from brand deals. So brand deals, and here's another stat for you. Of people who self-identify as creators, the survey question is, what is the highest earning revenue source for you as a creator? 69% say brand deals, 7% say ad share, 5% says started own brand. I don't know what that means. You don't make money by starting an own brand, you sell something. And then 5% said affiliate links. So brand deals are still the biggest deal for creators, and they will continue to be. Going back to what I said earlier in this conversation, I was talking about how large brand trust is at an all-time low. And that is a real statistic. So what's the alternative? We invest in people rather than brands to endorse us because people trust people. So inevitably where we're going is the power of the personal brand is becoming more and more important every single day. Not every single year, every single day. Back in 1997, there was a management guru named Tom Peters who wrote an article in Fast Company called The Brand Called You. This was the first seminal article about personal branding. 1997. We are now here in 2025. So almost, 20 years later, 30 years later? I can't do math. I'm kidding. It's 20 years later. Did I get it right? No, it's 30 years later. We're at the point finally where everyone needs to have a personal brand. Everyone is their own micro-influencer, whether it's with your friends or on social media. Everyone should be developing a very clear perspective on themselves, because the future of influence is in people. It's not in companies. It's in people. And even if you go back to what I said earlier, you asked me the question about B2B marketing. And I have the perspective that employees at a company should be the face of the brand, or part of the face of the brand. It's not Kellogg the tiger, or tiger from Kellogg's. It's like the people who work there, the people who are advocating for it.
How does a influencer strategy differ between a competitive industry and a less competitive industry?
What do you mean by competitive?
Let's say there's a lot of alternatives to a certain company's product, and they're trying to break through and become a leader. Are influencers a way to compete better than other forms of advertising?
You can't answer that question unless you know about the competitive landscape of that industry. And again, going back to where we started this podcast, who is the audience and what is the transformation that you're looking to provide for that audience? Generically speaking, yes, any company should be using personal brands as part of their marketing strategy. It should not be the exclusive channel, method, whatever you want to call it, of your marketing strategy. But yes, it should be a part of that marketing strategy. Some industries are more forward looking, and some industries are more personally brand dependent than others. For example, if you look at the oil and gas industry, although I am not in that industry, so someone from oil and gas could be listening to this and say, Kyle, you're completely wrong. But I am not familiar with many oil and gas influencers. Meaning, when was the last time you saw ExxonMobil, like, I had to do like a social campaign with an influencer? Like, buy more ExxonMobil or Shell. It's an undifferentiated product. I don't know how influencer plays there. I'm sure it does, but it's much less obvious than, let's say a consumer good, like a Canon camera, right? Or even going back to my SAP example, like something as competitive as software sales. That is a great area because it's all digital, where there's multiple influencers talking about software sales. I can't tell you the number of people on LinkedIn who are sales influencers who are talking about the latest sales technology product. So many of them. So there's a little bit of it depends. It should be part of every company, every industry, but the level to which you're going to rely on that depends upon the buyer and the audience.
Yeah, and it sounds like if everybody is using influencers, then it's table stakes and it's not really going to stand out as much. But if the competitors aren't, then it is more of a differentiator.
I think that's a blanket statement that's hard to say, because I don't think your strategy for standing out should be not dependent on one specific channel. I believe in the strategy of strategic omnipresence, meaning you should be at multiple touch points at multiple times. When someone thinks of your category, they should think of you. Meaning, if they think of your category at a trade show, they should think of you. If they think of your category when you're on social, they should think of you. If they think of your category while they're watching golf and you're selling SAP, you should see SAP as part of the golf tournament, right? Strategic omnipresence. So your ability to stand out is a lot less in the long term about making one big viral post, and rather having a regular drumbeat, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, of you showing up and being everywhere at all times. That is the way to ultimately win, being strategically omnipresent with your ideal customer profile, your ICP, which also just means get in front of the people who buy your product as much as possible in all the forms as possible. So don't go all in on influencer. Don't go all in on TV. Don't go all in on trade shows. Balance it out, and the weight of each channel should depend on who your target audience is and where they're consuming media.
Yeah. So in the B2B space, it can be tough to generate leads from some online sources, and then others, it's really easy to generate leads. So like content syndication versus display, for example. So how would you look at a budget split for tactics that do generate leads directly and tactics that don't, but we know probably influence people to become leads down the line?
Yeah, so it depends, which I know is not the best answer. But look, all of your marketing spend ultimately comes down to LTV to CAC. If you boiled it all down, it's just a formula. LTV to CAC. What is the lifetime value of customer? How much am I willing to spend to acquire that customer? So when you're looking at direct advertising, right? Direct campaigns versus brand marketing, which is I think what you're asking about, which is direct advertising will directly generate leads. Download my lead magnet, come to my webinar, get the white paper, use the coupon. That is direct advertising versus a brand campaign, which is really just raising awareness of your brand. Some portion of your budget, and I can't say what portion because it's going to depend upon the industry, it's going to depend upon the company, it's going to depend upon expectations from investors. There's all sorts of factors that influence it. But I can say from experience that if you completely cut brand spend, and I want to be careful about the word spend, and I'll double down on that in a moment. So I'll actually change the way that I'm framing it and saying, if you completely cut down on and eliminate brand building activities, it will be a benefit in the short run and it will hurt you in the long run because there'll be less awareness for your product and you're relying way more on people who already have a high no trust factor because they saw your brand advertising. The reality is direct advertising really works strongest if they already know of your brand. It's really hard to get someone to click on a direct call to action if they've never heard of you. If they have no trust at all. It's very hard. But if you have a long reputation of building a brand, it is much easier to get someone to click on your lead magnet to buy it. And I'm not even talking about buying products right now. I'm actually just talking about getting a lead in your system. So you can't completely cut brand, but the degree to which you throttle it is dependent on your stage, your performance, your investor expectations, and a little bit for the CEO also, their ideas on what makes for successful marketing function in their company.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Thank you so much, Kyle, for joining. I've learned so much here, and it's been a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me. This was fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you soon.